So this is one of the hot arguments on the streets as at this morning. How do we get down from this high wire of minimum wage? The social media is hot as you speak, and I'm sure you're aware. Folks says 18,000 is unjustifiable. So give the folks, workers, more money. Yes, we tick that off. The government does not have that much money. But some folks says, Bolson, hold on a second, what do you mean there's no money? Folks around the political governance corridor are having some nice time, so bring out the money.
I mean, the reality is I'm sympathetic to the view that 18,000 is small. When you break that down, that comes down to somewhere around $2 a day. Some poverty metrics use that as a gauge of living in poverty. So it sort of tells you that that's a very small amount. At the same time, right, there is no getting away from the fact that neither the federal government nor a lot of states can afford any material increase in minimum wage, right? And I don't even need to get to the private sector, which is likely going to be impacted by any hike, right? So unless we come up with a creative solution to boost revenues, i.e. somehow transform taxes from being 6% of GDP to, say, 20%, any material increase in minimum wage is simply going to lead us to a severe fiscal problem because we're already borrowing more than we are earning and spending 70% of what we earn on salaries. Regardless of what is going on with the National Assembly or elections and how much is given or allocated in other areas, there is no getting around those very simple, basic facts. And faced with them, I cannot justify an increase or any material increase in the minimum wage, at least for the foreseeable future.
So what should the Buhari's administration do?
Well, in terms of the near term, you need to find a way to placate the labor unions because, to be fair to them, this is a promise that was made many years ago, and it's a promise that we've gotten updates on periodically through the year, so much so that around May, I think, the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN was factoring in a potential hike in their inflation forecast, right? So it's something that we began to take relatively seriously despite our concerns around how it's going to be financed, right? So for the government to just come now and say, oh, we can't afford it is a bit strange because that was known or should have been known. So they are in a tough place and they need to find a way of placating the unions because giving in and increasing the wage is going to make personal cost balloon to the point where we have to borrow money to pay salaries. And as soon as we begin to do that again, we're heading towards a terribly huge iceberg that can sink the ship, right? So that's the frank reality on ground.
Where did you make money in third quarter? Where do you think investors made money?
Yeah, I personally did not make any money, boss, unfortunately. But and I think the markets were quite bad actually in Q3. So the equity market cumulatively, I think, was down about 10% in the quarter. Obviously, there were some stocks that sort of made gains, but broadly speaking, you know, looking across the market, it was a pretty bad time. I remember also at the start of September, especially the first 2 weeks or so, we saw a number of notable names hit their year low. So the Dangote Cements, the Nigerian breweries, the Nestle's. So it wasn't a very good time in the markets, right? And if you look at the fixed income market as well, between the end of June and the end of September, yields rose about 1% across the curve, right? So there was very little opportunity to do so. The way I see it, though, it just means that, you know, between now and the start of next year, there's a lot more opportunity to make money because, you know, I mean, prices of all securities are relatively beaten down. So this is the time to make your play for the next 6 to 18 months, particularly in the equity market. Because like I said, a number of premium names are trading near year lows. Some of them, like WAPCO, is trading somewhere around a 10-year low. So yes, there are challenges here and there, but it's a pretty good time, I feel, to begin to make your play on particular stocks that you think are going to lead any rally or charge post-elections.
But look at the emerging markets route because of what's happening in the U.S. and the QE in a talk about by the ECB in Brussels. Then you have a Eurobond out there. Nigeria paid down $500 million. $500 million was what we paid down on our Eurobond portfolio that we had. That was good news in July. But it looks like this administration will not be able to tap that market for $2.8 billion planned for this year. Of course, we're done with September. The last we heard from the Debt Management Office chief was that September was still on the calendar, but it's been silent. Everyone's been silent about this $2.8 billion, making it difficult right now for the administration to get that critical Eurobond funding for the 2018 budget.
Yes, I don't think that's likely. Perhaps we may see an issue November, December. It's something that we saw last year when things had gotten a bit quiet. I think we raised $3 billion in December, most of it for the T-bills refinancing that we began to saw at the start of this year. But I also saw some news around a new sukuk that may be coming out in November or December as well. So there are a bit of plays coming in. And I think, the reason for the delay is that the budget was passed so late, around June, July. So it's taking time for them to ramp up the borrowing. The unfortunate thing for us, I think, is that, yes, rates are going up in the domestic markets, and they're also obviously going up in the international market. So I think at 2032 Eurobond yield is somewhere just about 8%, which means it's trading at a discount now. So if we do tap into that market again, we can expect a higher coupon rate than the last time, right? Partly because of the Fed issue that you mentioned, but also because of elections and because of this trade war that just keeps on rumbling on and casts a shadow over the entire global economy, really. So the external environment is a bit harsher for us, which just means that we need to ramp up any external borrowing or even domestic borrowing that we intend to do for the 2018 budget.